so at least the select board could function.
Well, the fact that we've had, I don't know, twice that we've had, or 3 times we've had remote
Issues.
meetings, and it's been a problem. We're 3 for 3.
Yeah.
Well, 3 for 4 now.
Did
3
we
for
do a
4,
training
but
session?
it's a different, it's Zoom, so,
Jeff
Yeah.
says
Right.
we're good.
Our tech
Here you go.
guru was motioning us.
okay.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Let's call to order the Rockport Select Board meeting of Monday, January 13th. It's 6 PM, and we are here in the Parker Room. First thing I'd like to note, we have scheduled, the next item on the agenda is a public hearing for a new liquor license, and at the request of the applicants, that is going to be tabled, so we will address that at a future meeting. So that's off the agenda, which also means the action item on the liquor license is also being removed from the agenda. Are there any amendments to the agenda, other than what I just said?
I'm not sure if we need to have these as an agenda item, but I'd like to talk somewhere about the website a little bit.
Okay.
And also about a temporary sign ordinance, so just as a discussion item.
Okay,
I don't expect any action, but.
sure, let's do that. We don't have an item for discussion, I mean, we don't have an agenda item for discussion items, but we'll do that after action items.
Sure.
And, you know, maybe what you can do is just briefly tell us what you have in mind, and then we can schedule it in whatever way is appropriate for a future meeting,
Yeah,
a
I just don't
workshop.
know what else to do with it, and I'm
Yeah,
looking for guidance.
Yep.
So. I
Okay.
do- Sorry, go ahead.
no? So temporary sign ordinance and the website. Okay, next, public comment on non-agenda items. No, Doug's here for Parks Committee, might be. It's unusual, but we almost never have somebody take advantage of that slot. Take advantage of the slot for comments on non-agenda items.
It is.
No,
It is.
it's all good.
At this point.
It's all good, yeah. No.
And also, it's sort of a narrow window as far as my situation is concerned.
Okay,
So,
We got your back on this, Alex.
literally.
thank you.
Yeah, and if you want to introduce yourself, just for
So-
folks at home.
You obviously know why I'm here.
Alex, we know who you are, but could you just introduce yourself? Because we
I'm
might
sorry.
have people watching online.
With a microphone?
Yeah, have a seat in front of the microphone.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, we just, because they can't hear you if you're, we can hear you, but the folks at home can't.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's very good.
Good, I'm glad. My name is Alex Armentrout, date of birth 3/12/41.
The hospital wants that,
Which
not
facts
us.
I have had to repeat more times than I can possibly count.
Yeah,
Um,
sorry.
In the Armentrout matter, which is what I will call the Armentrout appeal of the sewer charges on our property on Rockcrest Drive, determine whether or not there are charges, debt service or otherwise, the Rockport Wastewater Department. I think maybe I'll put on my glasses. It is essential to relate the wording of the Rockport sewer ordinance to the facts on the ground. This is absolutely critical in this case. Section 104 of the sewer ordinance makes a simple declarative statement in that regard. To come under the scope of this ordinance, the property in question must abut a street, alley, or right-of-way in which there is located a public sewer. In this regard, I gave at his request, John Duke, a map of properties in question.
Yeah, and we
Back.
did receive your entire appeal and materials. All the select board has that.
And they've studied the map?
We went over that at our December meeting at great length. I don't know, did
At
you get a
which
chance
meeting?
to watch that meeting, our December meeting? Did you watch?
Yes, I did watch it,
Okay,
but I didn't see anything about the map.
yeah, we have that in front of us. That shows the
Okay, so
Rockcrest
you're-
subdivision and where your lots are and where the
Right, okay.
6 and 7 are.
So, you're telling me then that the board is aware of the location of the Armentrout property vis-à-vis the public sewer?
Right, and lot 6 and 7, which is part of the Armentrout property.
Right, and that
Yes,
the Armentrout property is, depending upon how you want to count, 1, 2, 3, 4 lots back from a public sewer.
The analysis the board used in making its decision, relying on our town staff and the sewer ordinance, is that the Rockcrest subdivision has its own private sewer line, but that abuts the public sewer line on Union Street. And that nexus and connection is why we determined that the Rockcrest subdivision lots are subject to debt service charges. Now,
Yeah.
what we did not do in your favor is we only found one equivalent user
I
rather than
saw that.
two. And
I've
that,
looked at this streaming twice.
yes.
Um,
So just so you
But
understand, that was the basis for our decision.
Well, that's fine, but it goes and flies in the face of the facts. You can't transmute a private sewer into a public sewer simply by deciding that because it's nearby.
Well,
it becomes
the
public.
Rockcrest is just a sewer line that feeds into the public sewer. The
Right.
Rockcrest sewer doesn't exist without the benefit of that public sewer
understand that, but
line that
that-
in turn goes to Camden for treatment.
I understand that, but that doesn't mean that our lots are somehow or another connected to the public sewer. They're not.
They most definitely are I mean, that was the decision the board made.
Well,
Was
the
the
decision
connection between-
unfortunately is incorrect.
You disagree?
As it says in the ordinance, the property in question must
Well-
abut.
All right, we'll let you make your public comment. We made our decision, and I feel like we, at the time, had abundant materials from you. We understood your position. We were making a similar decision for the Samoset. It has to do with private sewer lines that feed into the public sewer, and we made the determination that those private sewer lines only exist and are only useful as sewer lines because of the existence of the public sewer line that they're adjacent to and abut into.
But then you could rule that any connection in town somehow or another.
Well, a sewer line in town that feeds into the public sewer is part of the public sewer, and those people, in order to treat everybody fairly on the sewer system, are also liable for debt service charges.
This is a bastardization of what it says in the ordinance. You realize that? It's very simple and clear and plain.
Well, we relied
It's
on,
got to abut, and then, and it has to abut a property, a street or alley or right-of-way in which there is located a public sewer, which is not the case with this property.
well, we made our decision to
I know you
deny
made
the
your
abatement,
decision.
and we're
I'm
allowing you to have an opportunity for public comment, but we're not relitigating or re-arguing. The board made its decision.
So what you're saying is the decision's been made and it's immutable. Well, then I'm wasting my time. Why did I bother to come?
I don't know.
I think the next people you hear from in this matter will be one of my attorneys,
Okay.
because it's just, this decision is so blatantly wrong.
I understand you disagree with it, and
No, it's wrong. And further, if you go to section 603, it talks about private ways and whether or not those private ways are going to remain private. And under that section of the ordinance, as well as 104, this property shouldn't be being, not taxed, is what it was.
Yeah, the $72.50.
Doesn't matter how much it is.
Well-
If I don't owe it, then I don't pay it.
Fair enough. And we determined that you owe it.
Well,
And
then,
we determined that you only owe half of what some folks thought you should owe. So we found a middle ground
well,
there
that's
that.
even,
That's- that's
I
how it
mean,
ended up.
To be perfectly honest, I'm not gonna entertain that argument,
Fair enough.
because the number of lots in question isn't really relevant. But, so, how do you finesse the section six, the section,
Mr.
603?
Armentrout, we're not going to have a back and forth on this. This is public comment. We do have the rest of our agenda, other folks who are here for their pieces of
Fine.
the agenda, and we appreciate you
That's okay, as I
taking
said
the time to
before,
come in.
you'll next hear from one of my attorneys.
Okay. Thank you, and take care. Okay, next is the town manager's report and update.
So this is, there's actually quite a bit going along this time of year. It's always that after the holidays, everything sort of starts anew. And this year is no different. But I'll start with probably the biggest single piece of news that's occurred in the last week. The town was awarded unanimously by the Maine EMS Board a transporting license for our new EMS service here in Rockport. It was a unanimous, as I said, a unanimous vote. This will allow our service to actually begin to transport patients. Now, obviously, there's a few other steps that have to go in. One, we need to have a fire station completed where we can operate out of, that is prepared for that purpose. We're still working
what's
through
this-
that
Why does it have
effort.
to be complete?
Well, it doesn't have to be complete in terms of, it's more actually the billing side of things. So we have to have a inspection. There's a couple of, what I meant is there's a couple steps that still have to go before we can really take over. First thing is the ending of the contract. So we've informed Northeast Mobile Health that as of April 15th, we no longer wish to be served by that contract. That doesn't mean we couldn't sign other agreements or work with them in another capacity, but the end of that agreement would be in April. Second thing that has to happen, in addition to when we talk about the licensing, is the actual ambulance that we've ordered. That is due to arrive in Brunswick, basically the location for our dealer, where the lettering and everything will go on last week of February, first week of March. And then soon we'll have that rig up and running. I think we expect about a week or so before we'd have it back in our hands. So that gives us about a month or so before the end of the contract. The next thing that we have to talk about is billing, right? So we have a couple different pieces of that puzzle. One, we've already made our initial agreements. Now that we have the license, that we can start working with our billing company. Coming along with that, while we can bill, well, we can hold billing, we can receive patients who require Medicare or Medicaid, but to actually bill for those services, there's subsequent inspections that have to occur of the facility that we operate out of. So, unfortunately,
The garage, basically, that the ambulance is in.
yeah, and how do you store your medications and store your records and ensure, so all of that has to occur. So if for some reason we had someone who had Medicare who we had to transport tomorrow, we just would have to hold that billing until after that inspection had been complete and we were blessed by the folks in the federal government. So there's sort of a number of checkpoints that sort of are going along the way, but effectively once we have license in hand, we could transport, and there was a need. We certainly have our staff is running and ready to go. In fact, there was a situation on Thursday. We actually didn't have the license in hand. And there was a lot of like, well, we've been approved, but we don't have the license, but we can't. So we had to pass off and let a different service take it, but we could have been transporting as early as that day. But unfortunately, that didn't work. But it's a big deal. It's a really, really big deal.
Congratulations to
Yeah.
you and the staff who made that happen.
Thanks, Chief Peasley, the fire department, this board, the last year's board, who were part of the budget committee, staff. Almost every department has had one piece of this at the town office to try to get to this point, and we've spent a long road. We're sort of, there's a lot more to do though. So after that day, I emailed my colleagues in Hope, Lincolnville, and Camden, and offered the opportunity to talk. Let's meet. Let's talk about how does this work. I don't know what their plans are moving forward or where they plan to go. Maybe they plan to continue with Northeast, maybe not, maybe there's a lot of possibilities, and there's one more provider that's in the area. You know, I had said to, I think, the board last year when we were talking about this, I've said it to private residents who've pulled my ear on this issue a time or 12. But this, I fully expect that at the end of this, whenever that may be, I thought it was going to be in the spring of last year, that we're all going to end up in roughly the same place. And I still believe that. You know, I was disappointed that the town of Camden's votes and where their budget went last year didn't put them on a closer path to what we're doing and a closer endpoint to where we are. But it's a new budget season. You know, I can tell you firsthand, our office is working on our new budget. I'm sure the town of Camden is, and all the other municipalities with June town meetings right now. Now's a great time for us to, you know, figure out how do we work this out together. So, you know, we have an ambulance. We will be set up, potentially have a backup ambulance for our own service, but we can't serve 4 communities on our own. You know, our own plus 3 others. It's too much work. It's too much. It's too much, especially with the nursing facilities in Camden and so forth and so on. And so we need partners, and we want partners. We want to partner with Rockland. We want to partner with our neighbors. But it has to, you know, it's going to be something that makes sense for everybody. And so, anyway, door's open. The door is open. I've sort of put that out, and I'm hoping we can have some fruitful conversations that help everyone out. You know, because I think we have, while we've put together a good plan, I think we're in phase 1 of a multi-step phased process that I think is going to take many years of how fire and EMS and public safety in general, frankly, we'll lump police into that, how that's going to work in our region, Knox County.
Yeah.
You know, it's having all we just went through and working with on the police side of things. There's only so many people to offer who can do these jobs. There's only so many people who are authorized and have the licensing, and who want to go into that field, go to 18 weeks at the police academy in Vassal Borough, or, you know, go through years of training to become an EMT or a paramedic. We don't have enough of them, and there's finite resources. We can't just write endless checks to pay for these things. So I think we took a step that we had to, based upon the position that we were in and the position I believe our private provider is in. But this is the next step of just a multi-step effort that I think will go on over the next 5, 10 years, 20 years, where we work differently and we think differently. So there's a lot of platitudes in that, but I really do believe this is a jumping off point for Rockport's piece of that. And I would just quickly say, you know, there have been efforts to look at a tighter regionalization package that would have been, even though we had a tremendous increase in the budget for this year, that paled in comparison to what was the potential cost for Rockport with a much more equal distribution of labor between Rockland, Camden, and Rockport. So this is a compromised position that we're in. It's one crew with 2 people in Rockport full time. That's far fewer people that are working in Rockland right now, 24 hours a day. And it's fewer than what we would need if Camden and Rockport were to do one thing together. So there are steps, there is more conversation to be had, but in the same way when we went through this 10 years ago, when Camden First Aid, that issue first came to be, every town had to come to its solution independently. Even though there were 4 towns working together, Rockport had to do its due diligence, Hope, Lincolnville, Camden, and now will be the time for us to all have done that. We've done a little bit of the homework ahead of time, but my hope is that our colleagues and my colleagues next door and your colleagues and the three towns next door, can join us in some capacity. So, it's a big deal. It's a big deal for us, and I think we're as well stationed to not only get our own service off the ground, but to help others.
Right.
You know, we've somewhat led the way, and we've led a trail of breadcrumbs behind us. So, come on, let's go and let's do this thing together.
Well, I appreciate you, oops, sorry.
So is there a way that we can get it transporting sooner rather than later?
Well,
I
the
mean-
contract, so this is the issue of the primary transport authority. So the contract provides the Northeast the right to be the primary transport
Right.
authority. We've opted out of that contract and we'll be opting out as of April 15th.
So part of what got us in this conversation to begin with is more money, not an improvement in service. Isn't there anything in the contract that could, I mean, we've got the license. Wouldn't it be great to hit the ground running, get some billing going towards revenue? And
Oh.
if there's something,
Yep.
I'm
Well,
sure
we could
there's
use-
stuff in the contract that we could look at and that they're not living up to that could get us out sooner.
It would behoove us to be able to start billing as soon as we could,
Yeah.
for sure. And
I mean, aren't there like service
Yep.
level agreement requirements or
Yes.
things like that that we
Yeah.
could
Yes.
point to? I don't know.
yeah, I think all of that should be on the table and needs to be on the table. I think that we are, I think that that's something that we'll be looking at. I think the other piece is obviously getting in the building. We need to get the building done. I know that seems like, I know I'm making a big deal of that, but
And we can't use the public's,
we're right now, we
Public
have staff who are staying in a trailer outside our existing station in the village and working out of that. We
But that
needed to make that happen as well as do other things.
But that has
together.
nothing to do with whether we can transport or not, because they're running the rig anyway.
No, but we need to make that happen, I guess.
Oh,
is my
absolutely.
point. Yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
but that shouldn't stop us from transporting if we had the ability
No.
to do so.
No, but I think it's, I think we should look at that as, if we were able to augment the contract, I think we would look at that as something more of, as a found resource as opposed to an expectation. Because frankly, it's, there is an opt-out. We've exercised that opt-out. If we were able to operate sooner, and at this point, we're talking, by the time we actually have the station up and we're in there, we're talking about 2 months to, is a difference. 2 months can mean some real revenue. But it's not, we need, I would like to be able to operate and have our system up and running with a safety net underneath us
that's
first.
what I was thinking. We
That's
might
my,
not
that's my
necessarily-
preferred path to do this, and that timetable has gotten shorter as we've sort of moved along and had the station take longer. So I'm really hopeful that we have some time to operate as a transporting authority and with our staff and in our building and doing everything as we intend before we flip that switch and the net goes out from underneath. Knowing full well that if something were to happen with that private provider, we would be ready to jump on at literally a second's notice.
I mean, we're
you
ready
know?
now.
We are.
We are. I mean, we really
Yeah.
are ready now.
Other
Yeah.
than having the facility.
Other than having the facility.
Because I'm assuming
Yeah.
there's a certificate of occupancy, that kind of a thing that needs to be
Yeah,
done.
yeah, we need to do that. Yes,
And we
the
can
town
bill
needs to.
private insurers now.
Correct.
It's
Yeah,
Medicare, Medicaid that
Right.
require the
Right.
facility
Right.
inspection.
So
right.
Where is the ambulance?
The one we're using now?
Yeah.
It's in the station.
Oh,
right
here.
Public
there.
safety building.
Yeah,
Okay, okay.
yeah. So, that's,
And do I dare ask what the timeline is for the new station?
no, you
I mean,
don't, you
I'm-
don't dare.
I'm seeing a lot of action and some lights on down there, so that's good, but,
So we're
Any
still waiting
thoughts?
for permanent power to be connected, Michelle. So the lights that you're running are on temporary power.
right.
The CMP inspection is supposed to occur on Thursday, and let's hope that they see everything that they need to see, and then we would have permanent power. The generator still needs to be installed, the light poles need to be installed, and that's just, and there's a lot on the electrical side that hasn't been done. The floor has not been finished in the bay, which if it isn't started tomorrow, then we're gonna simply wait until the spring. But the power and the electrical issues are paramount right now, and it's beyond frustrating. So, yeah.
All right, so
John?
finish the building and figure out a way to get out of the contract sooner.
As long as.
That
we
would
get
be a
some-
hope.
And then we get some billing going and.
That would be the hope.
Recoup some costs, so
Yep.
you're
And
on
can-
it, right?
Can we bill without being out from under the contract?
Oh, yeah, we can, bill anything we do, we can bill. The issue, the contract provides
Obviously, we're
them,
paying in the meantime.
they're the first call, basically. It says that we have to go to dispatch and make sure that they're the first call if there's an EMS issue. If they don't want it, they can't take it, they're busy, something else happens, we now have the ability to be the second call
Gotcha.
or to go beyond.
Yeah, that was gonna be my question. If they
Mhm.
can't do it, we're in a position where we
Yep.
can transport
can.
and we can bill for that.
Right,
But do we
Right,
need
they're
those
tied up on
inspections,
another call.
sorry,
Federal inspection and all that needs to be done
that'll have to
Only
be done
for
as well.
Medicare and
before we
Medicaid.
can,
Yeah,
We could provide care, we can provide care, that's really more on the billing side of the issue.
And we
So-
can bill private insurance.
And we can bill private, and we can actually provide care, hold that bill for that person who's on Medicare, and then once that
That's great,
inspection's,
okay.
then you back bill for
So
that.
you can be retroactive.
Yeah, so you can provide the care, it's just a question of, these are the different things that we're going to run into
so
in
that
the
only
next.
applies to the
It's the
Medicare
person that-
kind
it's
of
the-
people. Okay.
crew that transports gets the billing.
Right. Yep,
John?
But it's only, that inspection is only for the federal
Yeah.
Medicare.
yes,
So-
yeah, or Medicaid,
Patients, so
yeah,
Medicare,
Medicaid.
Yeah.
those patients, okay.
yeah, absolutely.
Got a couple of questions, John. I'm sure we went into this when we decided to go down this path,
Yeah.
but the liability for the town is increased by taking on EMS services, I presume, right?
Well,
I mean, I assume somebody looked
We-
into that end of things?
I mean, the liability in one sense, yes, but in the other sense that we, as a municipality, the Maine Tort Claims Act gives us such broad authority to provide life-saving protections that we're immune from
Yeah, sovereign immunity.
a
pretty
ton
much.
of things that would, a private provider might have more issue.
So then I'm kind of also curious, and you don't necessarily have to have the answer now, but
Yeah.
it sounds like you were saying that creating a kind of a cooperative effort between towns doesn't scale. In other words, there's no financial advantage for us to come together with another town.
No,
I didn't hear
yeah, I wouldn't say that. I would
Okay.
say, I think a better way to phrase that would be that it's not a one-to-one scaling. It's more a question of circumstance and availability, and it's dictated largely by service area and crew availability, as opposed to say population size or valuation size or what have you, to determine the fit of community to community. So, for example, how long does it take to get an ambulance from West Rockport Route 90 to Lincolnville Center? Or that's providing, determining your service area based upon how long does it take as the crow flies to get from A to B. And then on top of that, what is your call volume? What type of call volume do you have? So, for example, the number of calls in Camden that are directly attributable to nursing care facilities creates a different type of mix and literal lift for those providers than fewer calls but spent on a three-car motor vehicle accident at the corner of 17 and 90. Different lift, different impact. One call as opposed to 20 calls. How you receive that, how you are able to respond. The other thing that goes into that as well is that there's an expectation, or I should say, there's when it was framed out with 3 communities, right? It was the availability of 1 rig available in Rockport, 1 rig available in Camden, and then Rockland and its crew available as well. So you had a tighter environment with more employees than that, than the 2 that we were talking about at any one time working. But it's that overlap of available resources was really what drove the 3 chiefs who pulled that plan together. Now, obviously, it's been many years since then, and we're doing a bit of a tighter build of what our service is. But you really, if Camden and Rockport, let's say, were to be the strongest of the 2 to rise up, Chief Peasley said, and I think he said when we were talking with the board about these options, to make that work to serve the 4 towns, Camden, Rockport, Hope, and Lincolnville, you really should have 2 rigs staffed. And that was his statement at that time, and I've
that's
heard no one to
Camden and
contradict
Rockport each having a rig staffed.
that. Yeah,
And then we can cover Hope and Lincolnville together.
yeah. Does that, I don't know, that doesn't totally answer your question in a way, but I just want to give a.
Basically, it's telling me that it's one of the obstacles to scaling this for cost savings is geographic coverage.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's what I was.
it is.
I was trying to identify what is it that's
Yeah.
the wild card in there.
I mean, the Canada First Aid, part of the reason those 4 towns stuck together is those 4 towns were the primary coverage, service area for Canada First Aid, and we were out of necessity in the fact that our provider was all going away at the same time. Well, let's band together and work together on this. And the structure of Canada First Aid mirrored that. But, as we went through that process 10 years ago, or 11 years ago, it was very clear that, 1, there is no authority that binds the 4 communities together. We don't vote as one, we don't think as one, we don't act as one. And 4 different towns were going to have to operate in 4 different capacities to approve any contract that was decided. So the group that met with officials from all 4 communities, really all they could do was recommend to each community and then hope that everyone sort of jumped in together. As we've sort of gone through the last 10 years, it's even more difficult now for everyone to all link arms and jump at the same time, because I think the costs and whatever we were going to move to were going to be wildly differing compared to if you're in Rockport versus Hope versus Camden versus Lincolnville. So,
Last question.
yeah.
So, I saw Jason was quoted at saying something like there was a 3,000% was that a typo?
No.
What
That's correct.
increased 3,000%?
The cost for the service. So
From Northeast.
from Northeast. So 11 years ago, it was roughly $30,000.
35, I think.
Yeah, to the 4 towns combined.
So they split.
And now the cost is over $900,000 for the 4 towns.
Yeah, you almost couldn't not do it because it was,
Yeah.
All right.
So it's yeah,
I was
it's a
thinking-
scary number, but it's
I was
a
thinking
real
that
number.
had to be a typo, but
I wish.
it's not. So
I wish.
I didn't factor in it was over a course of 10 years.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and it hasn't been all. Like I said, it hasn't been all at once. It's been stepped, throughout that time. That's the hardest part I have in the way that some of the letters are written from neighbors, because market forces are what drove those cost increases. It wasn't that Rockport asked for more service, Camden asked for more service, Lincolnville, we need you to get to the beach faster. That wasn't what drove that cost increase. What drove it was the fact that the market that Northeast operated in dried up. Their ability to access transfer calls out of Penn Bay started to dry up, and it started to dry up all over the place. And so as these other opportunities for Northeast have withered, our taxpayers have picked up the difference. And so that's where it's disingenuous for Northeast or neighbors to suggest that we're the cause for whatever potential increase they're going to see if they were to stay with Northeast. It's a disingenuous statement because in reality, there's a lot of market forces that are driving the private, EMS providers out of service, out of business. It's not Rockport. Rockport didn't drive the private provider out of Glenburn or out of Winslow or wherever. It's the fact that all of these providers are facing the same challenges, the same hurdles, and it's it's a shame for them. But are we gonna? You don't want to be the last person. One of my colleagues nearby always says you don't want to be the first person to do the new thing. You always want to be the second or after, right? I want to my addendum to that is you don't want to be the last person doing it of the last Bugsy Whip salesman, and I feel like that's where we are. So, or that's where we could be if we didn't do our own thing. So. Anyway.
Well, and I think as we've seen with Knox County, and, not to bring California into it, but infrastructure and our residents' trust in us to stay ahead of what infrastructure we provide to our community is what our job as public servants. And we know, and we heard last spring, that Northeast has not been able to provide the kind of ambulance service that we ourselves would personally want and we would expect for our town residents. And that's why we made the decision we made. Even though it was a heavy budget hit, we do believe, and I'm so great, I'm glad that you have reached out to our neighboring towns, because I do think stronger regionally is where we want to end up on this. Everybody benefits. We had to be first, but again, we were very concerned about the future of our ambulance service, and we wanted our residents to be protected, and that's why we did what we did. And it's been we're getting there, and it sounds like we're going to be there in a couple months. So,
Or maybe less.
yeah,
Or maybe less.
Or maybe less.
There you go.
yep.
Be cracking that
Can't
whip.
wait to see that first call.
So I did have other things happened this last,
More things going
period.
on. And
Tomorrow there's an election. So there is the voters in the 5 towns that are part of the 5 towns CSD, which obviously Rockport's a part of. We'll have an election from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. It'll occur at the town office, not at the library, not anywhere else. It'll be at the town office. So we're using that side off where planning codes and planning community development are sort of down there. It will be a smaller election, but it's a hand count and simply one question, so it's up or down. We talked about this at the board meeting last time in December. There's been a lot of frustration and concern raised in the community, both about lack of knowledge about what's being decided, about some of the decision making, about what went into the bond package and how the bond package was put together.
Timing.
Timing, absolutely. Timing of this, people are checked out during the Christmas holiday, and then after the Christmas holiday, in 2 weeks there's a vote. What is this? And so I think there's a lot that will come into that. We'll see how the results. Again, this is a hand count, so this is not going to be a situation where we'll have results at 8:15. It will probably take a little bit to go through the yeses and nos, but this is a pretty big decision of 7.3 million spread over 5 towns. The one thing I want to be very clear about, and people, I think, as I said, there's been a lot of controversy and a lot of people picking this up. I want to be very clear about this. I'm not sure, some people are new to the area, they don't understand how it works here in Maine, or at least in our community here in Maine. So in Maine, some school districts, a CSD or an SAD, if they are of that variety, they have the ability to largely generate their own budget, create their own tax request of the municipality, and create elections in and of themselves. The board is really the select board is given the opportunity to rubber stamp that request, but you can't say no. So even if you objected to 7.3 million, or, you know, the turf field should be pink and not purple and whatever. That's not a decision for this board or the town. The town doesn't have any authority in that. Town can't even set the date for the election.
None of the 4 towns can do it.
None of those towns can do that, right? So the
towns.
school district sets the date, the time, the method, everything. The town is only the, the vessel through which the election occurs, and the vessel through which we have to tax our residents to then fund whatever the school needs to pay. And in fact, to get real, you know, let town government 101 here, the obligation of the municipality is to pay the school expenses before they even pay their own costs.
Oh, wow.
So if for some reason things really got bad here, we'd have to write checks to cover our payment to the SAD and 5-town CSD before we'd pay staff or, you know, anything else. So the towns have very much a backseat in this role. And I think some people, particularly if you're not from the area, you're not familiar with the fact that this is not a budget nor a budget proposal or a bond proposal that has any responsibility or any direct connection to how the select board or town administration operate. I think some of that can get lost in particularly, you know, how all this works. And obviously there's a lot of concern about this particular issue, but you know, there is going to be a budget process that will be forthcoming, whether this passes or fails, that will, again, in the same way, be approved and will work through the school budget process, independent of the town's budget process. And at some point through, for those of you who are experiencing this, at some point in the middle of your budget process, we'll have a final number that they're going to say this is what the number will be, and then we plug that in, and then we can get a sense of where mill rates might go. But this is 70% of the tax bill is coming from the school, not from this $7.3 million bond, which will be spread over many years, but 70% of our costs are coming from education, high school, elementary, middle schools. That's the bulk of what our taxpayers are paying for. County is a 15-ish% number, a little less maybe, but we're in that 20-ish range. So I don't want to say that we all bear responsibility for what the tax commitment ultimately is, right? But just to give that true picture, because I think there's a lot of unhappy people out there. If Facebook is any judge of anything, there's a lot of unhappy people with this proposal. And so I just want to be really clear about how it all fits together. Because, you know, they're talking about that if this is approved, this will add about a 4.5% to 6% increase on top of what they're already working on in their proposed budget, which will probably mean a 10% increase. Now that doesn't hit evenly from town to town as well. So if our population numbers are up relative to other towns, we'll see an even bigger hit than 10%, and vice versa.
And
So
including valuation as well, right?
absolutely, yeah. So there's,
It's
I mean,
complicated how that,
very, very much so. But if people are concerned, there's always, with town government and everything is in the public sector, there's a way to get out there and have your voice heard. Through their budget process, there will be an open town meeting that will occur end of May, early June, where everybody in the 5 towns can show up and vote, pro or con on the budget, and they can have their voice heard. Alex has been a vocal member of someone who's been at those meetings. Other
now,
people.
do you mean the town's meeting? Because won't there be school board
board.
meetings?
That's sorry, yeah, so there's a town meeting for the school budget that occurs prior to the paper ballot vote on the school budget. It's a 2-stage process, but the school budget needs ratification in both places. So you and 10 friends could make up a number of people who show up to that budget meeting or that town meeting and make your voice heard and make your vote count. not to mention, there are always seats on the school board that people can run for, you know, so there are opportunities for people to get involved if they want to, and they, you know, they're upset and they want to see change. This is how you do it, you know?
Yep.
But this particular vote tomorrow is the whole package or
No.
none?
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
It's No,
Yep.
it's not the different sections of it, it's
Can't-
just one,
Nope.
yes or no?
That's right.
Yep.
And then do I understand that? Then they get their bids, and they go out to bid, and that's why in the spring we'll know what the final bid number is? Is that what you were saying?
No, no.
No.
They'll have the separate school budget, so the
Right,
rest
okay.
of the
Yeah.
school budget.
So the-
Oh, you were
so-
talking about the whole
Interest.
school budget?
The whole
Okay,
school
I thought
budget.
you just meant
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
that bond amount would be fine-tuned.
We're gonna, no, the bond
Okay.
amount, if it's approved, it's 7.3
Okay,
million.
okay.
They can't spend a dime over 7.3
Okay,
million.
okay.
But the funding of their entire budget, which
Yeah, that's the spring. Yeah.
7.3 million is a lot of money, but
It's a drop in the bucket.
it's
for-
not much compared to when you look at the totality of what the school budget is year over year over year. Now, I'm not saying that people should go out and vote the school budget down every year. I'm not saying that. I have kids in schools. I've grown up through those schools. I feel a lot for what our school district is, but if there are questions people have, and there are, if Facebook is any guide of those things, then people need to get involved and have their voice heard, or ask questions, and when they have more time to learn what's really, you know, happening, so.
And that's what we've heard from the school board, our representative themselves, is come to the school board meeting. We need to hear from you. If you're concerned, it makes their job easier if they're hearing from the public at the time they're making these decisions, rather than just grousing on Facebook. Which it's frustrating. I'm not trying to say minimize the level of taxation on our residents, but
Right. For sure.
there's also some very good information on our town website. I think it's this 5 towns explanation of the bond issue. So if people are wondering what's in there and why it's in there, and there's a good detailed explanation of all of that, so.
Yep, absolutely. I put a lot of that in my report.
Okay, I didn't,
So,
yeah.
but there's more. I mean, you're talking about 7.3 million, so there's, it's a lot of details in there.
Yeah, and you might agree or disagree, but it does look like a lot of thought was put into what's in that bond package. It doesn't,
Absolutely.
people need,
Yep.
so read it and vote.
Quick things, just want to say, get your dog's license, please, please, please. It's not fun to have to pay that $25 late fee on February 1st if you are late paying your dog. It's even worse if you work in the town office and you walk by the town clerk every day. Just
Just saying.
one who may have heard. Some of the information about our license, the new license plates coming this spring, is in my report. For those who aren't aware, if you have a Chickadee plate, your Chickadee plate is going tweet, 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 bye bye. So you need to, as you will be replacing your plate. So if, let's say, you have a June registration, at that point you will get a new plate for that Chickadee plate. You can request to keep the same number. If you so wish. There's some information in my report that talks about that. But it's going to mean we're going to have stacks and stacks of license plates in the town office for the next year or so, which will be certainly challenging. But in any
It
event,
still says vacation land.
we can't
I'm
let
not
that
gonna,
go.
yeah, I just feel like we're so much more than that. Yes, we're that, but
At least we got rid of the crawfish that was on the front, splattered on the back
Exactly
of
what I
it.
was.
And we had big turnout at Holly on the Harbor. I think we'll leave on a good note on this one. Big turnout at Holiday on the Harbor, 1,000 people or so. I think everyone I've talked to said that they think it's the biggest show we've done. The problem is you always have to top it the following year. So I don't know how we're going to possibly do that, but we will do our very best. And I lied, I do have one more thing. So Scott Bickford is retiring this month. And this is the last meeting we'll have before Scott departs. But just wanted to say publicly to thank Scott for decades. I mean, he's full-time. Scott's worked for us for 19 years. But before that, he was the alternate and doing LPI work for the town. And as a former code officer and really wet behind the ears LPI, there's few you could call who could better help you out of a jam and knew how to take someone under your wing and show you how it's supposed to be done. And so Scott is going to be missed in our office to a great degree. He's an institution. And while we're excited to have Andrew Lowe step into Scott's shoes, Scott is going to be a hard one to replace. And so we certainly wish him well on his next journey. His license is expiring the day after he retires. So you're not going to see Scott come back and check someone's leach field. He's done.
He's really,
Are we,
Uh,
are we gonna have an opportunity to sufficiently toast him?
Better hurry.
Scott is notoriously we'll say a bit camera shy about these things, but I think one could stop by or catch him at a moment's notice. His last day is the 24th, so do with that information what one will.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, thanks to Scott for many
Yes.
years of service. And
Absolutely.
all of us who have dealt with him, and he's helped the town. I mean, he's been in very public processes through the zoning board of appeals in very challenging circumstances, and he has always just remained a calm, steady rock, makes good decisions, confident in them, and he's well respected. So, yeah, that's a loss to the town. But retirements happen, and congratulations, Scott.
Absolutely.
Okay, anything else, John?
Nope.
On the report, so then we'll move on to our consent agenda. I think we've put 4 meeting minutes in here. I know one, Michelle was not at the November 12th meeting, right?
Yeah, so I was gonna ask how you want to handle that.
Yeah, so is it best to just pull that one out, do that as a separate, and approve the consent agenda with the other 3 meeting minutes?
The November 12th?
Yeah,
Yeah,
November
I
12th.
have a question on that anyway, so I think it would be good.
Okay, so we'll pull that November 12th out of the consent agenda, November 12th minutes, and we'll just do the general assistance donations and then the 3 other meeting minutes. Do we have a motion?
I move to accept the consent agenda as
Second.
amended.
Okay.
Second.
As amended, great. Any discussion?
Can you say what the donations are?
It's
Or
anonymous.
Anonymous, but
Yeah,
in case anybody's listening, what donations to,
to a general assistance.
okay.
Yeah, and
Some
thank you
people
to those
decided.
folks who have done that and supported our general assistance program, which, as we've discussed several times over the last couple months, is really an important safety net for both residents of Rockport and others who need help. Okay, all those in favor? Okay,
Aye.
all in favor? Okay. Then we have the November 12th minutes.
Yeah,
So John, you want to raise a
yeah,
question about?
for some reason, the motion I made is not reflected in the minutes.
Okay,
So,
let's pull those up.
if we could
Let's
take a look at that. The motion that we recommended and approved read as follows.
Hang on, let me grab the November 12th.
Which
Why do
section,
I have
John?
October 15th?
It's the Harbor Committee Work Plan section.
Okay.
So it's close, but it's got a significant fault, I guess, because in terms of reflecting what was actually voted on.
Now
So,
is that the December 9th?
November 12th.
Because I have the Harbor Committee Work Plan, in the materials I have, it shows that from the December 9th
Yeah,
minutes.
That's what I see.
Because actually,
Well,
those
yeah.
minutes, the packet I have does not include the November 12th minutes, it has the October 15th.
All right, well, then I'm confused.
Oh, no, wait, that's
No,
mine. Nope,
it
I'm
does
wrong,
have-
you're right.
The first section is up,
It's
is
the approval of
November.
October 15th, yep.
I'm looking at
That's,
Page 33 of the
Page
packet,
33,
if
yeah.
that helps.
so that would be, that's the December 9th meeting.
Oh, okay.
So I read it, so this is what I have on here. It says, I move to approve the Harbor Committee work plan to include a provision that reviews use of town property for winter boat and float storage for 2026.
Well, what's missing is the word, part of that which says, the motion was to request that the Harbor Committee develop a plan in 2026 and thereafter for winter storage of private floats and boats anywhere other than Marine Park green space.
No, I don't remember it being that detailed. I mean, we can
Well,
listen to the,
I had it
or
written
did you-
down and read it, so, and
it shows on the live stream that way.
I didn't check the live stream, but I had it written down before I got into the meeting, so.
Yeah, I mean, this is the
And
motion.
we had a discussion about,
Well, we can double check that then, but that's December 9th, which we just approved, which I'm not gonna obviously stand on that if there's something.
yeah.
What do you see as a substantive difference there?
The issue was,
The green space.
Keeping
the
them off
green
the
space.
Yeah,
Okay.
green
Because
space.
we're putting docks in a space where the community is increasingly wanting to use as a park, including the fireworks, which is creating a attractive nuisance. I saw kids clambering on it during the fireworks, and it's just like it's ripe for somebody to get really hurt. And the more we start doing down there and the extended season we're experiencing, we just gotta, and they're private floats, they're not the town floats.
Oh, no, all the good reasons to have them examine that and come back to us with their proposal.
But I wanna make sure they understand that, that's a important part of coming up with a plan
Okay.
is,
That they're not on that.
they're
part.
not on that green,
Other
plus,
places.
Well,
trash is the
but
line.
wait a minute, I'm not sure, as a select board, that I agree that what we did at the meeting was to tell the Harbor Committee, you've got to figure a way to get those floats off the green space. I feel like was part of our discussion as the concern, but we need to hear back. This is my view, and I'm not trying to speak for anybody else, but that we wanted to hear from the Harbor Committee, and fair enough that we want them to understand we have concerns about using the green space that way. But there are a lot of factors to be considered with those floats.
Do I recall that in the discussion that somebody said, oh yeah, I can see why we wanna do that? Like, wasn't there somebody here from the Harbor
Was it
Committee?
Sam?
That's what I'm thinking. I just have this
I didn't go back
slight
and look at the-
recollection that
yeah.
somebody was like, oh, I see what you're saying, John, and.
Well, how
and,
about, since
like, yeah.
and
And they said it would be viable.
Like Sam and Abby were both here, if I remember.
Yeah.
Abby was here.
Abby
Yeah,
was
I don't
here,
think
that's
Sam
what I'm
was, but
thinking.
Abby was for sure.
Yeah.
Well,
And
why
then-
don't
and
we,
then it'd
rather
be
than
viable, yeah.
take up a bunch of time tonight to try to remember
we'll
what we
look at
did?
it,
And I'm
yeah.
not challenging anything, why don't we agree that for we'll go back and look at what was said at the meeting and be refreshed on that at our next meeting, and make sure we get it right, so that we're giving the Harbor Committee the right instructions. Does that work for everyone? John?
Sure,
yeah.
I'd be surprised if it's not the language that's here, cause.
Yeah,
Sure, and I'm not
that's
trying to challenge that, but let's just get it,
I
be
kind of,
be
Watch
correct
it,
in
get
what
it,
we do.
I
yeah.
recall that was the general,
It was definitely
yeah,
talked about,
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not trying to
yeah,
take
yeah,
away
yeah.
that as an issue at all, because I think that
we'll
was
just make sure
part
we're
of it.
official.
Well, give us
Yeah.
time to clarify it
Yeah,
for the next
Okay.
meeting.
yeah. So, let's see, do we need to go back and undo our approval of the December 9th meeting minutes, is that?
Probably.
Who's the parliament?
What would Robert's rules say?
I know,
I
what
think,
should
I
we
think
do here?
technically, yeah, because we're not
Yeah, okay.
the
So we
consent
need,
agenda.
I think, a
as
motion
presented.
to revise the motion to approve the consent agenda to remove the December 9 minutes from that.
I move what you just said.
Okay.
Second,
Kim and John seconded, and all those in favor? Okay, so
Favor.
December 9's pulled out. We still, I think, then it sounds like we can approve November 12th
Yeah.
minutes, because that, you don't have a concern with those.
apparently not, I'm in the wrong
Yeah,
meeting.
just,
minutes.
it gets
Because
confusing.
they were all together.
Yeah, and there's the top page which has the date, but then the next page is
Right.
the meeting before, and so it's really easy.
I make
Okay,
a motion, we approve November 12th meeting
Mhm.
yep.
minutes.
Is there a
Second.
second?
Second.
Michael? And all those in favor? And Michelle will be abstaining.
Yeah, because the page right before it
Yes.
says approve meeting minutes November 12th, so
Yeah, so that's
That would
the
be your
second,
December one.
that's the
there's
first
no,
item of the.
there's no date on the one that has the
Well,
committee work plan.
No, but the one before it is confusing. Before the November 12th reference, the page before that says December 9.
I'm gonna see if we can put a footer on these, because I've been
It-
confused about
That would
which
be-
is which.
Yeah.
We were-
Especially, because we usually would
first
just have
time-
one set of minutes, and then now we've gotten.
Remember the last time when I tried to be cute and put the packet together and
Right,
had the
and we
wrong
ended up with
month
the
in?
October
Oh, God.
15th minutes.
Right? Don't do these things again, Joan, right?
No.
You know?
Yeah.
Stay in your
I
lane.
think that's why we're in the position tonight that we are, because they
Yes.
were not right last time. But
Yeah,
Mea culpa.
Exactly,
Mea culpa.
exactly.
I'm
I think-
sorry.
I think a footer would be good.
it's a great idea. Confusion is a good thing to avoid. Okay, I think we got through those. Action items. The first action item still on the agenda is act on committee work plans. First, we have Parks and Beautification, and I think we have Doug Cole here, co-chair of that committee.
I know everybody here, but for people at home, I'm Doug Cole and I'm co-chair of the Park Committee. Before we get really into it, I just want to share some really good news with you folks. Today, I cut the cable service to my household and I'm saving a bunch of money.
Wow.
So is that going to the parks budget?
What are we? I'm so confused.
Don't you guys remember that from television?
Oh,
Well, you guys
it
are-
went over our heads.
I think-
This is a terrible audience.
That's right,
I'll
you better
explain
talk
it all
about why
to
you're
you later.
here. Anything
Draw
you
it
want
out
to say
for us,
about
Doug.
parks?
All right, yes, I do. First of all, I want to apologize. In your packet, you were given last year's five-year plan. So I handed out tonight this year's plan with some corrections on the front of it.
Wondering about that, Doug.
Yeah, and again, this was sort of an administrative mistake, and I'll actually have some more to say about that later. I'm here to answer questions largely. Our parks right now are in very good shape. We don't have any large capital projects coming up over this next year, so the budget is all pretty much the same as it was. Things are running smoothly. And like I say, we don't have any major plantings or anything planned. We're pretty much largely just maintaining the parks at their current level. There still tends to be a little bit of friction between the Harbor Committee and the Parks Committee, just over whose purview is what. And I think John's reference earlier to the storage of floats on park space, it's just a small issue. And there's little things like that, nothing that I think needs the select board's attention. Referring to the administrative problem I had with the handout, our committee continues to not get the administrative staff support that it really needs. We have a staff person assigned to our committee who, for various reasons, and they tend to be good reasons, can't attend our meetings, but it's critical, really, for communication purposes, to make sure people understand what's being asked and whatnot. And we've tried to make some changes. I've worked with John on this, and I'm as much at fault as anyone of not really going through channels, using Brandy to do work orders and stuff, because everything just gets lost and there's not good communication. So I tend to call the Director of Public Works directly, which I realize I shouldn't, but I do, and things sort of get done that way. But it's not the right way to run a business. I've talked to John about this a bit in the past. Things haven't really changed, but I have some new ideas, and I'd like to get together with John over the next week or two when things are relatively slower for him, and perhaps try to address that. So
What's that?
I think that's a good level to keep that discussion. I don't think the select board needs to
No,
weigh in.
you're
Yeah,
absolutely
no, I
right,
think-
and that's why I came here tonight, I had a whole thing planned, and I thought, they don't need to hear this.
No, this is,
But you do need to hear that there's an issue there that we're trying to work through. Do you have questions?
Well, the work plan, again, I don't want to get too much into the granular parts
Sure.
of this, but it just seems to repeat the same projects year over year. I mean, am I missing something? I mean, how much ADA compliant stuff can you do in one park? I mean,
Okay, where are we there?
Number one.
Like for Walker Park.
I mean, it just seems to be like every year you got to work on Walker Park. Am I
well, this
missing
is
something?
adding to the reserve for
Th-
Walker
Yeah,
Park.
this
so it's
has
the
to
same-
do with the playground equipment. Historically, we've budgeted $12,000 a year to replace the equipment in.
So it's just replacing some other piece of
This
equipment
is,
every year?
actually, it doesn't reference the reserve, but I think what you're trying to do is build up a reserve, right?
Build up a reserve for new equipment, which will be ADA
Right.
Oh,
approved.
okay.
So, but it
And
just-
What
yeah.
we have
So
now
it's
is
not an
not
expense, it's
ADA.
a reserve.
It's
Okay.
a 12, yeah. So I
Sorry,
think it should reference reserve,
Yeah.
because it's a little
Okay.
confusing.
not clear, sorry.
Okay. Did you have any success in raising money by getting people to buy benches?
No, that's
Okay.
been it's been a big disappointment for me, and we haven't.
Have we ever, I'm sorry to get off topic here a little bit, but it's parks. Have we ever thought about park benches up on the walkway that overlooks the harbor there? Up on that new walkway we put in?
On the high sidewalk?
Yeah.
But there's no,
There's a couple of really sweet spots that would be, I think, ideal for benches.
I feel like that's pretty
Well,
narrow,
we'll
but
certainly
yeah, we
look
could.
at it, yeah.
I mean, every time I walk by, I think, I'd love to have a place to sit, get it higher
Yeah.
up so you can see over the railing, but
Right,
it's an amazing view, and, if it were left to me and I were trying to
The next Parks
memorialize
Committee
somebody.
meeting is,
next Tuesday. Yes, okay, sure.
Anyways, it seems like it would just be ripe for somebody to put a plaque on a nice bench and pay for it.
You volunteering?
No. No, I'm got enough to volunteer on at the moment.
Okay,
All right, otherwise, great work plan, Doug.
well,
yeah, I think, your indication of the concern about staff assistance is just because this committee is such an engaged, active committee and doing wonderful things for our town. So really appreciate the work. And the work plan, I know we'll be discussing, for instance, the Walker Park Reserve. That'll be discussed through budget time. But we hear and see the Parks Committee's recommendation on that.
okay, thank you.
Thank
I'll
you.
explain the joke to you later.
Yeah, we're gonna need
Draw
some
it
help
out,
on that.
please.
Do it on Facebook. Apparently, that's where everybody's communicating.
We need humor there.
Yeah, I'll miss it too. That's part of my problem.
Everybody got my Holiday Inn joke
What joke?
Yes,
at that meeting.
yes.
Oh, gosh, now we're
It's
going to
notorious.
jokes. Okay.
Right.
Okay, so I guess if you had an opportunity for questions, we could have a motion to approve the Parks and Beautification Work Plan.
So moved.
Oh, this is combined,
Oh.
but,
Conservation
It's
Commission
act
work
on
plans.
committee work plan, so we have to
Yeah.
go to the conservation.
let's go to the
Commission.
conservation one then, next. Okay, and do we have anybody here from the Conservation Commission? No, okay.
No. Just a quick note in terms of, since Doug brought it up, we're gonna change our staffing around for the Conservation Commission. And I think, you look through this, you can see probably why. So much of what we're working through are really planning related. They're less about water monitoring and ensuring, Bilbo can get out in the middle of the harbor and test the sample. And so we're gonna move Orion over to take on the Conservation Commission. He's excited to sort of take on that work, cause it integrates with so many other things that he's already doing. So, Abby was, appreciated the relief, I suppose, of one less committee. So Ryan will be the staff person on this. But he wasn't involved as they generated the work plan, so he was a little bit of a fish out of water to come here tonight to talk about this.
Does it make sense to hold off on approving this so he can look it over, or?
No, I don't think
Okay.
I would. I mean,
Okay.
in the same way, I would say that the parks work plan has some stalwarts of years gone by. Much of the Conservation Commission's is as well. I think that the biggest changes, the Climate Resilience Initiative, they're looking to create a new climate action plan and to interface with the comprehensive plan. And that work is already beginning. I know that the comp plan met today. I don't know if you want to add anything on that rather than have me talk about it since you were there, but.
It's gonna be to you before the next meeting, before our next board meeting. Most sections of it are tight. I'm working on the executive summary currently, and we just got the Conservation Commission part of it, I think was what came in today also.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's
what I was-
progressing nicely.
Yeah.
So you'll have before your next meeting, I believe.
Yay.
Okay.
Exciting.
So the Conservation Commission is writing a part of what's in the comprehensive plan, and they've
Yeah.
submitted that.
Right.
Okay.
So that's a key part of this early section. And then they're continuing the speaker series, and they'll, go through the different projects. But
Okay.
I think in terms of new work, this is really the meat and potatoes of where they are right now. And I think also we recently submitted a joint, somewhat joint grant application with the town of Camden. It's under Rockport, but we're working with the Camden Can group to somewhat work together to try to find ways in which the needs of both communities can be supported, and it obviously looks a whole lot better in front of those who want to approve those grant funds. So we're trying to also integrate across town lines on some of these things, because obviously we have the same climate here as we do the town next door. So I think that's a very helpful thing.
Yep. Great. All right, do we have a motion to approve both work plans?
Well, I'll move it again.
Okay, go John.
I'll second.
And Michael second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Okay.
Aye.
Okay, great. And thank you to the Conservation Commission members as well, and the work you all did on this work plan, and to the Parks Committee. So, moving right along, we have got, I think it's time for the planning board. An applicant.
Did the planning board chair review the application?
I don't know the answer to that question,
Yeah.
actually. I don't know. I don't know if that has happened.
I didn't get a chance. I was going to call Jeff, but
Yeah, I don't know.
as the liaison to the planning board, I'd like to recommend we do that before we bring it before the
Yeah.
select board.
You know, I'd
Yeah.
like to give Peter a chance. I feel badly now because you've been very patient. You're Peter, right? Yeah. I
Oh.
feel badly because he's been sitting here for this long meeting.
Oh, okay, well, you
Yeah,
can
come
answer.
on up.
Jeff,
and-
Jeff LeClaire?
Yeah.
I
You
did have a long conversation.
Oh, good,
Okay.
all right, well,
Yeah.
that's all. I just want to make sure.
Yeah,
you-
he called me at Penn Bay
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
at work, and we spoke for about an hour or so.
Oh,
Great.
that's a good
And we
sign.
solved all the problems, so actually, we don't need a
Actually,
planning
he
board.
needs a planning
Let's
board.
all go.
Everything is planned out, huh?
What's wrong with us? 1 hour and you get it done.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Well, if we could just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about.
Well,
what you want to do on the planning board.
grateful to be here. As I mentioned in the application, we've been traveling up here for 30-plus years, and I just recently got hired about a year or so ago at Penn Bay, and we've been renting for the last year or so, and as you well know, inventory has changed post-COVID, I think, significantly, from what I remember 30 years ago.
So
So
you bought a place in Rockport.
we bought a place in Rockport, and we closed in December.
Congratulations and welcome.
Thank you. And I lived in Georgetown for 32 years, and it was a good opportunity to really get to know the town. At the time, the population of Georgetown was only 5,000, and it was mostly a farm community. And then because of 8 lanes of 95, people discovered, when we first moved there, we had to tell people where it was, you know.
No more.
And it changed drastically. And some of the discussions you were having earlier tonight, it's sort of deja vu, because I was on the Board of Selectmen in Georgetown. Doesn't matter where the state is in New England or what the town is, some of the challenges are the same.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, it's sort of like when I lived in Boston for a long period of time, and I only got to see it when relatives and friends from out of town came.
It's true.
Then you'd go on the tour. And I think by being a member of the planning board, get to learn about the town, but also help the town, and that's sort of the goal.
Well, really appreciate your volunteering for that and having the background.
Thank you.
Any questions for
I
Peter?
was impressed.
Yeah, me too. Appreciate the effort put into the application too, so that we could get to know you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sounds like you were kind of a party animal on the select board down there.
That's what we need, is a party animal.
Looking forward to it.
Sounds good.
Okay.
I'm just
Thank
kidding
you.
you, Peter, obviously.
Yeah, well, thank you for making the application. I guess maybe you were okay listening to the rest of our meeting, but we also appreciate your patience in getting to this point in the agenda.
For a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah, we took advantage of not having the heavy agenda to hear about a lot.
I'll see you next week, Peter.
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay. Do we have a motion?
So is he a seat on the planning board, an alternate, or what?
It says, well, it just says committee application for the planning board.
Because I thought we had
you have
the
a
planning
Yeah.
board was full at the time, so it sounds like
Might
he
be an
would be an
alternate.
alternate.
And this is saying with a term ending June 2027?
Yeah, so that's,
That
An
sounds like a
alternate then.
seat, so.
it does sound like a
does.
seat, because that is like replacing maybe somebody else, because that's not a full
Did
3-year
somebody
term.
step down from the planning board?
Let's see, the planning board.
Let me go to the website.
I don't recall anyone stepping down.
Let's see.
Let me count the numbers here. That'd be the seventh member.
I think 7 is the cap on the planning
And he'd
board.
be the 7th?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
well
there's a
then
vacancy
there is a
then, okay.
vacancy.
All right.
Yep.
I move
Okay.
to approve Peter Sarno's committee application for the planning board with a term ending June 2027.
Okay, is there a
Second.
second?
Second.
John? Any further discussion? All those in favor? Great.
Aye.
Yay. All right, well, Peter
Okay.
already left, but we're really grateful that he's stepped forward, and looks like he has some good background and expertise that will help the planning board. So, thank you. Alrighty, next, we have act on safety mission statement. John?
So we'll be undertaking our annual safety day, which is our training where we ensure everyone knows all of the policies related to safety around the workplace. That'll occur on the 28th of January. So this is part of our safety plan, and effectively the board is approving of the mission statement, and it just sends the message that the board, all the way from the top down, endorses and supports our need to have a safe workplace. That's it.
Great. Okay, do we have a motion?
I move to approve the safety mission statement as presented.
Second?
Second.
Michael? Any further discussion? All those in favor? Okay.
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, next is act on the emergency operations plan proclamation and powers.
So annually, as part of our safety day, we review any changes to our emergency operations plan to ensure that we are, you know, not, that everyone knows where to be, where to go, how it all works. This year, we have a number of items that are like 5 seconds away from being operational, but they are not now. And we talked about, we had our department head meeting last week and discussed the plan and whether or not we should take those steps now and make those changes to the plan today, or operate as we are today, which is effectively what our plan should be as of operating as of today, and then revise it when, well, Northeast is no longer our primary transporting authority for EMS service, and the West Rockport Fire Station. Amongst, those are the two most notable changes.
So like a month from now.
Yeah. So, well, probably more like, well, by the time it comes to you, April. So the plan, the decision was, let's go forward with the plan as is with very minor changes. Changes to phone numbers, changes to new staff, and then come back with a revised plan, like I said, in a month or two or whatever it might
Month.
be.
Month is good.
When it's 100% official that we're doing.
When it's 100% official, right.
I would agree with that.
Some of us would have lost money on the pool for when the West Rockport Fire Station is open, so we're a little sore about this.
I'm still in the running.
I know.
Waiting Andrew Lowe.
Cash in your winnings soon. Yeah.
Are you still within 2025?
Yeah.
Thankfully.
Good.
Thankfully.
Yes.
Quick question, John. I just noticed in the communications director, I think it was, the
Yep.
job description. You know, it seems like it needs updating to recognize the role of social media and digital technology for communication. It seems like, it feels dated. So,
Well, and honestly, when you're in the middle of an event, that's what you're spending most of your time on, is the socials.
I know.
You're
And
100%
I
right
was
about
reading
that.
it going, geez, this feels like it's back in the 80s or something, you know. So maybe next round, we could look at that and with the other updates.
That's a good point.
Bring
Great,
that in.
great point, John, yeah.
And then, this is a related question, but you want to go ahead with the motion for now, and then I'll come
We
back?
could do that.
Okay. Do the motion first.
Yep, do we have a motion to
Yep.
approve?
I'll do that.
Go, Michael.
I move to approve the emergency operations plan proclamation and powers as presented.
Okay, second?
Second.
Oh, go ahead, Kim.
Kim? Okay, any discussion?
Yes.
I guess that's what you're doing right now, John, is discussion, right?
Oh, no,
Or,
mine, yeah, it is, I guess it could be
I mean, I think
considered
that's
part
where
of
it's
discussion.
now that we have the motion, now we're gonna
Yeah,
have discussion.
yeah. But I was impressed, because Kim and I both went through the MIMS training, and it's fascinating when you realize, you know, when something happens, you know, we're all responsible as select board members. So I just wanted to kind of put a underline on that everybody should really make themselves familiar with this document.
Pretty sobering, actually.
And I don't know if everybody else has gone through MIMS, but it was a good refresher for me with, you know, incident command protocols and that sort of thing from search and rescue days. So it's all good. But the question I have, or the topic I have, which is, this has prompted it, was at some point, I wonder if it makes sense for us as a town to encourage our staff to get training, you know, in various aspects of EMT or, you know, paramedic stuff, or even just, you know, logistics support. And then when there is an incident, that they would be available as a policy to just get down there. You know, other towns do it and have done it quite effectively, and it kind of gives a faster response because they're probably in the office working.
Yep.
They know the town will support them with their time.
Yep.
And they're already trained, and they have a lot of familiarity with the town.
Yeah.
I know there's people in the other town offices that actually work for some of the,
Right.
you know, like Jody over in Camden is involved with, what, Hope or something? Lincolnville?
Thomaston, she's in Thomaston.
Thomaston.
She's- Yeah, Thomaston Ambulance, yeah.
Regularly volunteers for the ambulance service.
Absolutely.
So,
Yep.
you know, if we could maybe explore that at some point. I don't know what's involved, you know, because they'd be taking time away from being in the office. But, you know, that seems like it's a smart move on the town's part to get really, especially when we're struggling to get volunteers in some cases, like with our fire department or something like that. But
Yeah, no, it's a great thought. Andrew Lowe, our code officer, is, for those who may know, has been involved in the fire service it was deputy chief in Camden until last year, and he came over. He's actually done station coverage for our station on occasion when we, so, you know, wearing a couple different hats and wearing the pager and the whole thing. But you're right. No, it's sort of a shorthand too, right? Where you know everybody, you know where things are, you know where they are, you know where they're going. Abby has a great deal of training as well. Of course, she's running this, you know, still with the snowball at times in the winter, but also, you know, she has a background also in EMT training as well. So we've got a number of people who can do a whole lot more than you think they can. But it's a good idea, and I would say the next thing we're going to start to see is classes and training and the opportunity to sort of grow out from what we're already doing, right? So, yes, there'll be the regular like blood pressure checks and things like that, but I think on a professional development side of things as well, I think that's
well,
a
like we
really
even
good idea.
subsidize their, whatever, if there's a cost to get some training, and make sure there's a policy about letting them have time to do that.
Yep.
It
a good idea.
seems like money well spent.
I agree.
And it's a great way to, you know, create a good team,
Yep.
esprit de corps around that.
Definitely.
That's it.
Okay. Any other?
I mean, I hear there's gonna be some CPR classes coming up.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking is, I mean, EMT and paramedic can be some pretty substantial training, but
Or
first
just
aid
just
kinds of things
volunteering
are-
for the fire department, being, you know, on dispatch, or
Yeah,
that's the kind of stuff that I see in other town offices, and the staff are doing it on their own. They're not necessarily being encouraged by the town they work for. They're actually doing it for other towns.
right. No, I understand.
Yeah, as, you know, but like when Andrew did the, you know, backfilling,
Yeah.
was he able to do that on town time?
Yeah.
On salary, yeah, so he was covered. So
was
we
covered.
basically already do it.
Yeah.
It's just not, we don't make a policy out of it. and
Right.
We might want to look at that.
Yeah.
So-
That's a good idea.
I think it is nice if you can find the right match, because not every town staff member might
No, but
care about doing that, but if somebody is interested and have the right,
I'll be candid, when we had the emergency, the big floods and all that stuff, you know, I have my raincoat, and I realized, oh yeah, it has my name on it and all that stuff, it's like, but I don't know what I would do to help, you know? And I think John's point is very good, you know, to have-
Yeah, certainly.
have something, you know, if I could assist in something, I would have, but all I was able to do was walk around, you know, and just look.
how's this going? Yeah,
But I think that would be wonderful.
okay. Well, maybe John, you guys can look into that.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so are we ready for a vote on this? Okay. All those in favor? Okay. 5-0.
Great.
and we've got Michelle's vote. so-
Yep,
Yep.
yep, I
Okay.
saw Michelle.
Yep, I vote.
She did. Yep, she's a yes.
Is this, do we have just one more thing?
Just the select
Adjournment?
board liaison reports.
Oh, the liaison report, oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we have, well, let's go to, John had those two items to discuss that he wanted to raise, the website and temporary sign ordinance. So,
Well,
John,
yeah, I don't want to go on too much about it, but it kind of came to light that we were a little slow to get information up on the website for the vote tomorrow. And and I know I've had other issues with the calendar, it feels like we need to formalize, you know, like, what are we doing with
How
this
we get the
website?
website.
And who's in charge of it, and make sure everybody knows to, maybe in the town office, it's well known with staff, but do people on the committees and, the next layer out
Yeah.
know who to get the information to, and then a commitment on whoever that person is to get that information up as soon as possible. And, I can understand with the school thing, it was
That really
kind of
came last
sprung on
minute,
us and
yeah.
all that, but I had residents asking me, there's a vote? And, and that's the first place we should be encouraging people to go is our own website, so.
And also ask them to sign up for Civic Alert, because
Yeah.
we have not had great
Yeah.
adoption of that, which
No.
is such a great service.
No.
But I don't
Yeah.
disagree that the website needs to be updated as well.
Yeah, and maybe I'm not suggesting a redesign of the website or anything, but I could, but.
You could. You
Yeah,
really could.
certainly things we could do better, but I think for now, I'd be just happy if we, formalize who's in charge of that, and it's known who to send the information to, and they know to get it up or get it approved by you before they, expedite it in some way.
Yeah.
And that the committee chairs all know that they should get their information to that person.
It's very much, I would say it's very case by case, I think, and how it works. The overall sort of town government, town operation of the website is really sort of my office, and that's something that Diane and I are sort of linked on. Individual pages, individual departments have control of their own websites, their own sort of sub-pages within this. So the harbor has their side, the fire department, planning, community development. So there's those sort of pieces that can manage it quite, to some effect. Planning, I would say probably Orion probably has the best handle out of anybody, because he really does use that as a way it's, for all the committees to be able to access their information. And then of course you have the SharePoint side of it, which is much more like the internal view of what you're doing. But in terms of the some of the others, for example, like a harbor committee or a conservation commission, that's been a little bit more of a difficult number to hit, just because they're a little bit more separated, I think, from town operations of sorts.
Although my sense is Diane does a pretty good job, at least, of keeping the members listed,
Yeah.
the bylaws.
Yeah,
I don't know about
and the
meeting
calendar.
minutes, yeah.
I would echo your concern too about the election. The election. I will say this: I think we did more about the election in December than any other town, and I would say we did more probably than our friends at the school had done in the month of December. Now everyone's looking for information in January, and there's not enough, and there's never enough. And I think we still should have had more on there, but election time is the most important time to have things on that website, because it's the place where everyone goes. Where do I vote? What time? What's the ballot look like? And I will say, as you kind of put it, John, it sort of snuck up on us in a way that it's not part of our regular course of action. So I think everyone in our office knows who to go to when things have to get up there. I think the challenges that we faced are varied based upon what the tasks are. So, for example, the task force, the Harbor Strategic Land Task Force, we're not quite yet at that place, but very quickly we could be at a point where that website is very, very important, right? So I've got great faith that Orion being part of that, and how he has updated other projects we've done, that will work fairly well. The bridge is in a little bit of a different circumstance, because that's a bit more of an internal dialogue with DOT until some things are decided. So it's harder to find sort of this is how you do it. But I think in terms of staff, it's very clear who to go to and how to get decisions. I think that the challenge I see is even a bigger sense of how do we get all these committees to feel like they're part of you know, the bigger app, you know, thing.
Yeah, in addition to just the committee sections and all that stuff too, and different departments, I envision it having, for lack of a better term, breaking news, you know, prominently displayed, like, you know, if there's harbor flooding, if there's, you know, an event that's happening.
Yeah.
If an upcoming election, people can go and easily say, oh,
Yep.
what's the most current active stuff I
Yes.
should be aware of?
Yes. This is a battle I've fought with every single person who I've hired to build a website, because not everybody's on Facebook, not everybody's on X, whatever you
I
want to
never-
call it,
I never
right?
get it.
But some people, the first thing you go is the website,
Yeah.
right? And what I've always wanted is the ability to take what you have in social media and marry it with what's on your website.
So you don't have to go to two separate.
Right, it's a seamless thing. So, you know, if you're on the web, if you're on Facebook, if you're a regular Facebook user, maybe you're already seeing those things. But if you're not, I'll go to the town website and I can find all the pertinent information about what I need right in this little section of the website that's right front,
If there's
right, you know, sort of
Snowstorm coming, parking ban,
sharing you,
whatever.
yeah, no, closing
Road
for,
closures and.
yeah, no, I,
Some of the stuff you use Civic Alert for, which is fine, but
Right.
why
That was-
couldn't that be on the website as well?
exactly. Like, and we try to marry what we have in a civic alert with what's in a social media posting, so that there's some
Yes.
unanimity there. In fact, that's the way the system works, is that you just check a box and it goes to Facebook as well as to everyone's text.
But not to the website.
But not to the website. It doesn't integrate that way. So,
Are we using is our content management system
Yeah.
the one that all the towns use in the state of Maine? That, I can't remember the company that, the.
Trio?
Was it Trio?
Well, Trio manages a lot of our financial data, a lot of our property information.
Well,
That,
I guess,
that's
I don't need to necessarily
No,
know
but-
all the
but it-
details, John, but.
but it's a great point.
Yeah,
Large
I guess
point.
maybe what we
We're
wait,
somewhat restricted by their technology is what I'm suggesting, and that
Yes.
at some point, we might want to just say, we need more. And the answer is we're gonna have to look to some other vendor, and that should be something like Gus should be involved, or, you know, because it's got to be connected to our internet security and all our other correspondence. So
Thank you
I
for
understand
saying
it's a
that, yes.
bigger problem than, or challenge than just put on a new skin on the website.
Yeah.
But everything you're asking for, I think, can be done more seamlessly than what we are currently doing, I guarantee you.
I think you're right.
And there are ways to save a lot of steps, but somebody's got to own it.
Someone's
And-
gotta own it.
right.
That's right.
And John, I'm going to suggest that, you probably aren't the person to own that.
Ah.
I just think it's something that I
Yeah.
would encourage you to delegate that to, I know Orion's very fluent in this area. He's
Yeah.
also in charge of economic development and planning, and, it kind of all fits better, I think. Plus, his assistant could, whenever that happens, I don't know if we've gotten a new one yet.
That was a
Not
job
yet.
listing.
But when we
yeah.
do, we could, that's a good place to say, oh, by the way, you're also going to be supporting Orion, so it doesn't land on his desk 100%. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, let's look,
That's exactly.
you give
what I'm-
this some thought and
Yeah,
think,
So,
good thoughts.
as I know
Yes.
you've
Yeah.
got just way too much already on your plate.
Good
so-
stuff. No, I appreciate it.
Alright.
Thank you.
yep.
All right, so that's.
Okay, temporary sign
One temporary, so this came up, it just seems like there's a lot of signs that'll just pop up out of the blue sometimes, and then we have to,
So we do have a temporary sign ordinance.
we do have a temporary sign ordinance, but it allows, the way it reads is, they can be put in public right-of-ways if they have a permit. So basically, all they have to do is come into the office and get a permit, and then they can, I don't have the rest of the ordinance on ours, but I think it's like, it's like an 8-week period or something like that they can have a sign up.
I think that's right.
Correct me if I'm
I
not.
don't
Sounds
have the
right.
language
Don't
in
hold me
front
to
of
the
me.
actual numbers, but
Yeah.
that seemed like it seems like anybody who wants to put a sign up for anything in a public right-of-way in town, once they get a permit, can pretty much salt and pepper our town with signage that frankly, I find a little, personally, a little bit offensive of, it goes against the kind of why we don't have billboards everywhere. And
Right.
it's just visual clutter at a point. And it, you know, it occurred, I don't want to go into too much specifics but there was a period there where I was like, what are these, you know, they're popping up everywhere. And initially I thought they were just somebody, because we've seen people just start putting up signs. And I immediately call Scott and say, Scott, does he have a permit? You know, and he asked me to bring it into the town office. So we need to, at some point, look at our ordinance and adjust the language in there. Because I don't think the way it's currently written is what we want as a community, unless I'm completely off base.
No, I think there are more limits than you described, but we don't have that in front of us, so let's look into that. Fair enough.
Yeah, I think at some point, a workshop on kind of all the little things we want to fix in the ordinances and stuff like that. I don't know.
Yeah, well, let's first of all just know what the baseline is for the sign ordinance, because I know the ORC back in the past has dealt with sort of those very concerns, but because we've got free speech stuff, I mean, there's just sort of some.
And I know, speaking with Andrew, there's another concern with the MDOT directional signs.
Yeah.
Those have been, our ordinances, it needs to be updated. Let's just put it, so the sign that is indicated in our ordinance is none of the options that are available presently for MDOT. So anyway,
Okay, so
that's
we
part,
already
put it
have
on the
that.
list.
Yeah.
of-
Wait, say that again, our ordinance?
There's two options of sizes, and the one that's in the ordinance right now is neither of those two. So we've created a third option that doesn't exist.
Yeah, the sign thing, when I was on the planning board, we
Because
had,
the DOT signs
Right,
don't match our ordinance.
right. And we have some that have been, we have the right to remove them if they are dilapidated or
You're talking about directional.
the directional signs.
2
And-
miles to wherever.
Yeah, the one, well, Rockwood Opera House, there's a Rockwood Opera House directional sign that's on Route 17, you know, so that the town paid for that at some point to have that installed. But there's a number of them that, anyway, that's just language that Andrew and I have talked about that needs to be looked at. So, there's a lot of these issues that are sort of, they need a home. And I, you know, yeah, so anyway, I hear you, John. I hear you.
Yep. So we'll look into that some more. Okay, yeah. And, you know, I think we've sort of touched on I was going to sort of, I guess we're going to move into liaison reports, and there's something I wanted to just sort of make sure we're thinking about. We have a lot of committees in our town. One of the committees that we're sort of, I think we just need to maybe begin talking about, and maybe it's related to the sign ordinance, but the ordinance review committee, as we talk about these ordinances. And the folks on that committee has done a lot of really good work for us in the past and important work. There have been some changes, you know, more recently because the ordinance review committee is, in the more recent past, worked on the land use ordinance and changes to that. But that was creating some issues for us because the planning board is really the interpreter and arbiter of what the land use ordinance says as applied to individual circumstances. So we were in a situation where we had an ordinance that was drafted by a group of folks who had reasons for what they were doing, and it made sense. But then the entity, the planning board, that really had to apply this ordinance to folks in town and to applicants had no background or understanding why the land use ordinance said what it said, because they'd been left out of that process. And then all of a sudden they're, you know, in a much more important way, are having to apply an ordinance that they just had no role in developing. So in the more recent past, we've actually had the planning board make the changes to the land use ordinance, and that's what we voted on, you know, at our several more recent elections. Our land use ordinance changes adopted and, you know, engaged with by the planning board, and I think makes a lot more sense. But then it leaves open the question of what role, if any, is there for an entity called the Ordinance Review Committee? And I think that's maybe something we would want to address at our next meeting or at a future meeting, and talk to the folks on that committee, try to see if that is really a useful way of developing ordinances in Rockport, to sort of just have an entity known as the Ordinance Review Committee. We've sort of taken the most important ordinance, I would suggest, the land use ordinance, and have that be under the guise of the planning board. But we do have other ordinances, and I mean, the sign ordinance stuff right now is within the land use ordinance. So, so I guess I just heads up that we should be talking about that a little more and figure out where, what that is. And, you know, the members rightfully so have said, hey, what do you want from us? We're happy to help, but we don't necessarily have a good answer to that in this moment.
And all of these committees, every single one of them, other than the Conservation Commission and to the Planning Board and the ZBA, every other committee exists solely at your whim. So the ORC was really created to support the select board's need to place ordinances and adjust ordinances to be placed on the ballot. And I had a great conversation with our star assessor, who previously was planning board chair for life, it seemed. And Carrie's recollection was the planning board was so busy with the work that they were doing, meeting twice a month. You know, it was a very busy time in the late 90s, early 2000s, to the point where they pushed off a lot of the ordinance work to the ORC. Well, we're living in a very different world right now, and also we have a full-time planner.
Right, we have someone who can do ordinances.
Right, so the needs are different. I think it's as much about checks and balances, so that before the five of you have a chance to make sure this should go on the ballot, shouldn't go on the ballot, it's been vetted, right? And that's, I have a great appreciation for Orion and the hard work he does, but I think it's about what you need, the five of you need to feel as though that vetting's occurred, and that, whatever's being presented to you is something that's ready for prime time. Mm-hmm. So we've been tossing this idea around the office of what to do and where to do, but right now we have a committee that's existing, and they're just sort of, what do we do here? Yeah. And it's up to the board to give them a work plan from which they go out and do the work. But a lot of their work is really something that we already have a staff person who's a professional in the field, to do, and
a planning board.
And a planning board who's reviewing it. So it's,
well, I think the ordinance review, it had its time,
right.
I think. And I'm not necessarily advocating one way or the other than having been on the planning board a long time and then watched it go through this transition. Yeah. And having Orion there is improved, I think, some aspects of it, and especially because it has made for changes that are easier for the planning board to work with, to your point, Denise. Where it's the land use ordinance, I think that's getting pretty well covered these days because of Orion, frankly. However, I would say if there's ever any transition there, all that institutional memory is at least for
it's
a
either
period.
With the planning board
or it's lost
Yeah.
until we can build it back up again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When you have the ordinance review committee that are people that have been in the community a long time, been working on this stuff, some of them for decades, they hold on to a lot of information that's very valuable. So I don't, it's almost like they're a great backup,
right.
And I don't want to lose them.
Right.
And I think that in other parts, apart from land use ordinance, I think they could be very valuable, and hope we can figure out how to use them there. But I think where the planning board and land use ordinance these days, it's getting covered from everything I've observed. So.
Yeah. So we'll see, maybe next month we'll have I don't know if a workshop is the right way, does it need that level of,
Could be a discussion.
you can just
you
have
know.
it as a
It could
discussion
be-
item?
It could be
and-
bundled with some other
Yeah.
administrative issues we might
Yeah,
have
so
that we
maybe
want to
stuff
wrestle with.
that we wanna-
Because I think we do need to, there's some other ordinances I'd love to have a discussion of as a select board, and then the comp
Mm-hmm.
plan, it may drive some changes we need to be
Yeah.
talking about.
That's part of this, is if we can clarify some of the roles before the comp plan is locked in, it will help that implementation process, to
Did
make
we-
it clear.
On that point, on the comp plan, we've already posted it to the public, right? But as a select board, did we really ever have, did we have our
It's the
conversation?
draft, it's the draft, so
We
it's
will
actually,
have that
it's
once.
a revising.
So where do we come into the,
After
Yeah.
this comes back to us.
oh, it does, okay,
Yeah.
and then we're going to convene as a select
Yeah.
board on
And
it.
then we would be essentially recommending to the voters
Yeah.
approval of the comp plan
Of the final,
With any modifications that we make.
that we might.
Okay, all right, I just wanted to.
Is that right?
I
That
think
was
so,
my
yeah.
understanding,
Yeah,
is it?
I'll admit,
We've had all these public processes, we've had all the various committees engaged, so it should be, by the time it comes to us, we're sort of the last word on it.
Yeah.
And we've been, it won't come as a surprise to any of us what's in there.
my understanding is what's on the town website is the evolving
Is the current
current
draft.
draft,
Yeah,
Right.
which, there's parts I was writing last night, and I'm like, I put it separate document, but it's on SharePoint, so,
Yeah.
you're not on the website changing.
no,
it as
that's
we
not
speak.
on there,
Yeah.
but I
But that's
think
how
if there's
current it is.
anything that's changing, it's there, so.
Yeah.
So we can look at it anytime we want.
And that's
is
my
what you're
understanding,
suggesting.
that's my
Yeah.
assumption.
It's a living document.
That's
but
right.
Which one?
I don't know
On-
how valuable that is,
The
or
comp-
how
comp
smart
plan.
it is, but.
On the website or on
Yeah.
SharePoint?
I think on the website is
It
what
should
Michael
be
was
on the
saying.
There
website.
is-
There's a link,
Yeah.
Should
it
be.
says for the draft,
I'm not sure how, I think it's
I don't
only
know how-
after it's gone to the committee that it ends up back on the draft, on the public link.
'cause that's what I didn't go
I think
through,
so.
but I was
This
like,
doesn't look like a
I wonder
live.
how.
Okay, no, I think we overused the word live. But what Michael was
Yeah.
saying is,
Oh, it's-
as maybe some committee made some suggestions, those changes continue to be incorporated in what's on the website.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So it's close to what Michael is now making some additional changes.
We only have I'm only seeing the 2004 on the website.
Scroll, go back. No, go back.
Comprehensive Plan Committee?
Hit your back button up top. Not sure where you went.
Well,
But I know on whatever page that was on. if you
Under
scroll down
governance?
A couple rows, it will say draft.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
The good news is that Peter Sarno's already on the website.
Are you serious?
Yes. It's hilarious.
We do not
Did you do
mess
that?
around here.
It's like,
No, I did not do that. Just,
Well,
he was there before.
he was there
We
before.
even voted.
He was one of the counted, that's right.
I didn't want to share that at the time, but I thought
He was one of the 7 I counted.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, well,
he
good.
was up there
Get
before
ahead
we
of
even
things.
voted.
Grass does not grow under our feet.
Yeah, yeah.
The only thing I would just say about changes to the comprehensive plan, I would be cautious of making changes with the board, at the board level.
Yeah.
Because of how much has gone into it. Rightly or wrongly, that can be,
Yeah, if you think
then
you
you're
might.
wearing it.
Yeah. If you think we might be interested in that, you better get it done right now while Michael's also making changes.
and have the comp plan committee,
Yeah.
as part of that, it's,
Yeah,
but,
I think that's right, John. that
but it's,
There's been a lot of citizen involvement and engagement.
and it's been a long time to get to this point.
Yep.
So we're
Been
really,
years, so
Yes.
yeah, if you
Yeah.
have feedback, let's get it in now.
yeah, please.
And respect the process on our part.
well, actually, yeah, I'm looking quickly at the executive summary, and what's showing on there is what was proposed as a draft, it's not what I've done yet.
Yeah, yeah,
Which,
right,
that-
right.
so
No,
that's
I
valid,
understand that,
that's
yeah.
valid, but I think it's gonna be a lot different than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. All right, moving right along to select board liaison reports. John? Anything?
Yeah, I have a liaison report on the Harbor Strategic Plan Task Force.
Okay.
Just by way of reminder, the purpose of the task force is to work with a third-party contractor to develop a plan that addresses, in their words, the impacts of climate change. Basically, what we're talking about is sea level rise, increasing impact of storm events, et cetera, while balancing those needs with the existing uses in the harbor for decades to come. So they've narrowed down the pool. They narrowed down the pool of respondents to the RFP that went out to 5 for in-person interviews and presentations, which occurred last Tuesday and Wednesday evenings. And following the interviews, the task force voted. I'm pleased to report unanimously to award the contract to Richardson Associates, which is the same firm working with the town of Camden on its harbor climate resiliency plan, as well as multiple waterfront projects up and down the coast, Thomaston, Belfast, Bath, Biddeford. They know the coast of Maine pretty well, but there were other very good applicants as well. So it wasn't necessarily an easy call, but by the time the discussion finished up, everybody agreed on the final selection. We're working out the final contract wording, I believe, as we're right now, as I speak. But they should be able to begin their work, assuming that all goes smoothly, which I don't expect anything would get in the way, in the next few weeks, with the goal of a final report presentation to the select board around June 2025. So, and by way of reminder, the funding to develop this plan is provided through a $60,000 grant from, I've got to read it, the Community Resilience Partnership Community Action Grant from the state of Maine. So this is not town fund, taxpayer funds for Rockport. This is the state helping us out, and we're very grateful for that. So that's my report.
Great, and grateful for all of you on the committee, because I think you're going to
Yeah.
have a busy 6 months here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very important. Kim?
I got nothing. The harbor committee did not meet in December.
Okay,
They took the month off.
okay, great,
Planning board meets next week, so
yeah,
nothing there.
okay. Michael? I think you talked about the comprehensive plan committee.
I don't
Anything
think
else?
the
Pathways, that's probably,
Pathways, I don't,
holidays have been,
I know we've got, yeah, not much has happened lately.
yeah.
But we have an upcoming joint meeting, I think, with Camden.
Great.
Coming right up. And Conservation Commission,
Work plan approved.
yeah.
Yeah, great. Michelle?
Not much other than everyone got their budget schedules, so budget committee will be kicking off and fun times ahead, so be ready.
Yeah, here we go, here we go. Yeah, and the committees I'm liaison on, nobody met. Library committee will be meeting, a couple meetings coming up next week or so. All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
That was the fastest motion all night.
Really?
Second.
No.
Okay,
Yeah.
John.
What?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
It's only been 2 hours.
Aye.
All right.
Okay. Aye.
Great.
Is Michael here yet?
Michelle, thank you for participating. I hope you,
Feel better.
yep, get better soon.
Yes.
Thank you. I think I'm supposed to stay on though, aren't I?
What's that?
Are we on?
Yeah.